Hello and welcome to the Alpha Movement podcast. My name is Tom Foxley and on today's show I am joined by Donnie Campbell. Now Donnie has completed some incredible ultramarathon and trail running tasks. He is a very impressive human being in that regard, and he also has a good eye for coaching. He has a good philosophy behind coaching and endurance sports. He's someone that kind of aligns with what I believe too, which is obviously a reason why I had him on the podcast. But please enjoy this episode with Donnie Campbell, all about running, all about ultramarathons, and please reach out to us, connect to us if you enjoy the show. And remember, if you are in London, I have one coaching client space. So if you head to alphamovement.co/London, you can apply for that one spot. I haven't even looked at the responses yet, but I know there's quite a few, so you're going to have to be lucky, but it's worth a shot anyway. And remember, you can go to patreon.com/Alpha Movement Podcast and you can support the show there. So please enjoy this show with Mr. Donnie Campbell. So Donnie, welcome to the show, man. It's a real pleasure to have you on board. Can we start off by giving yourself, because basically before this I'll do a little biographical introduction, but throw some colour in there. Who's Donnie Campbell and kind of what have you done?
So recently I did the Ramsey Round, which is a classic 24-hour mountain challenge involving running 24 Munros round Lochaber area in Scotland. To make it slightly harder, I decided to do it in winter conditions, and basically involves running 90k and climbing 8,500 metres of ascent, which is equivalent to climbing up Mount Everest from sea level. So it was a great day out. Previously to that, I run ultras quite competitively. I won the British Trail Championships this year. I've ran for the UK on trail. I have also ran 184 miles non-stop from Glasgow to Skye. Ran across the Namib Desert. I've ran up Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya. I think that covers basically recently what I've done. Previously to that, I was an ex-Royal Marine, and before that, I was in school and used to play shinty, which was a sport played in the west of Scotland.
Nice. I saw at one point you went from, well, in your words, went from a 17-stone jogger to an ultramarathon. How did that happen?
I always get asked that question. So basically, growing up in school, I played shinty very competitively. So I played up to under 18s for Scotland against the Irish at their hurling. So it's composite rules. From there, I got sold the dream, joined the Marines, travelled the world, great sporting opportunities. So did that for 4 years. Kind of enjoyed it, but didn't at the same time. So left and went to uni to study sports coaching and development. So I was at uni when I kind of made up for lost time in my late teenage years by partying too hard, too many takeaways, and not looking after myself. And I just put weight on. Like, I was probably eating the same as I was when I was training, if not more, but not training. I was only maybe playing the occasional game of football or that with friends. So after 3 years of that, before I knew I was 17 stone. And that's when I got back and got into running. So after I left university, I was kind of wanting to get back to playing sports at a competitive level, got a competitive nature, but man, I could hardly run the length of myself. So basically I'd been there before, I knew what it takes, so I just kind of got the head down, started eating healthy, training, and started losing weight gradually over a couple of year period, and just end up falling into ultra running. A friend suggested I can't go and do this race on Islay and Jura in Scotland. It was 140 odd miles over 5 days. It seemed like a great adventure, be out in the hills. Did that, finished fourth, and fell in love with kind of trail and ultra running. And from there, that's kind of, I didn't play shinty again, even though my main objective was to get fit to play shinty again. I've ended up just running now. So what was it that drew you to the hills? I've always enjoyed the outdoors, even growing up in Skye. I've got a wicked backyard to play in. The Coolin mountain range is the most alpine mountains you'll get in the UK. So, growing up there, I was spoiled for the outdoor lifestyle. And even when I was kind of, shall we say, bigger, about 16, 17 stone, I would still go walking in the hills in the summer with friends and stuff like that, but I wasn't running them. I'd say it's more mountaineering and taking a day to do 1 or 2 Munros rather than doing 23 to 24 in a day. So I've always loved the outdoors, and just kind of I just really enjoyed it. It's hard to pinpoint why I enjoy it so much, but yeah, just kind of that sense of adventure, seeing the landscape, seeing different colours, and challenging yourself as well, it motivates me.
What's the typical training like? Because like you get like varying different schools of thought in terms of training for ultramarathons and kind of long distance events or endurance events, and like you kind of get the kind of the CrossFit / cross training methodology, and you get the like just add more miles philosophy as well. Whereabouts do you fall on that spectrum, and kind of what's the thought behind your program?
Cool. So I'm a running coach as well. So basically, my thought is that everyone's individual. Not one method fits one person. So, for example, I coach athletes that thrive on, say, for example, high mileage, 100 miles plus a week, big volume training. But I've got other athletes, if I gave them that program, they would break and be injured. So, they thrive more on more quality sessions, keeping the mileage low. Whereas if I did that with someone that really thrived on the high mileage stuff, that might impact their performance, confidence-wise, and stuff like that. So, from that point of view, everything is individual to the athlete. And again, on top of that, I look at strength and conditioning with the athletes, because that's one of the main things. A lot of runners will actually come and see me because they keep getting injured. And it's normally down to strength and conditioning, glutes not firing, glute medius not firing, running from the hamstrings, all that kind of stuff, weak core, not running postures, put stress on the lower back. All that is kind of the reason we look at strength and conditioning for a runner. My personal training is, thankfully, I've got really good biomechanics. It's something I've worked on as my running form. I look at running as a skill. Just like kicking a football. David Beckham can kick a football, but so can I, but he can kick a football a lot better than me. So it's exactly the same with running. You can improve your running biomechanics as a skill, especially trail running and downhill running, all the technical stuff, skill as well. So my training now is specifically geared towards trail running. So I'll run 95% of my running is done on trail and hills, and I calculate my training in ascent rather than distance. And my strength and conditioning normally involves me going rock climbing or doing something like that. Because me personally, I can go and do a gym session with S&C, but I'd rather go and do some rock climbing, which I think is great conditioning as a runner, because you're working your balance, your core. And as a runner, you don't want to be overly bulky, so you don't be lifting heavy weights. It's more moving your own body weight. And again, kind of running I do, rock climbing kind of helps that as well.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of split is there between kind of high intensity training in yours and just getting miles in? Kind of, I know it's a one size fits one kind of approach, but it's just interesting to see kind of whereabouts you fall, like how much is kind of sub, 10K, and what's kind of the long, slow duration stuff.
Cool. So me personally, I kind of do a big volume training load. So in my peak training for races in the summer, I'll be training twice a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday once a day, and then Saturday will be a long run. I've aimed to hit 2 key speed sessions a week, one slightly longer. So, for example, a tempo run where I'm running at my lactic threshold pace for 45 minutes to an hour, and then another session which will be intervals of some sort based on what race, normally hill reps, because I'm normally racing up hills. So that's kind of like 2-minute intervals, working more VO2 max area. And then the rest of the runs are basically done at a steady state where I'm not running too hard because I want to keep myself for the speed session. So, that's the grey shade area a lot of runners will get into. So they'll do their easy sessions too hard. When it comes to the hard sessions, they can't do hard enough. So actually, when I'm running some of my runs around R4C or in the Pentlands, on my steady state runs, I'm actually getting passed by other runners because I'm taking it easy. I'm just getting the miles in, taking the legs over a bit. I'm not trying to push because I want to keep myself, especially for the speed sessions. That's the ones that are going to make a big difference in your training.
How are you calculating the pace? Are you going off heart rate, or is it feel?
I'm predominantly feel. I do use a heart rate monitor as a gauge, but again, heart rates can vary depending on stress levels, sleep, caffeine, and a lot of variety of things. So, I'm kind of come to the feeling of, I believe in running by feel, but using your training aids to help you. So your heart rate, your APC excursion, your pace on your watch, your GPS, all that kind of stuff gives you a fuller picture rather than just relying on one.
Yeah, what kind of tech are you using?
Tech-wise, basically I use a Sunto Ambit, which is great for navigational. It gives you everything I need from heart rate to speed on the climb, speed in the descent, average pace, all your general stuff, but it's got a great navigational feature. That's what I use for my own personal training, and that loads up to MovesCount, their online platform. As a coach, I'll use Training Peaks. It's just a bit more interactive for athlete coach, but it gives you all these fancy graphs that I'm still trying to figure out. And these stressor scores that are worked on Black Magic. It's good to have, but nothing beats speaking to an athlete and finding out how they're actually feeling.
Oh, exactly. How are you tracking recovery?
Track recovery, just by just general how I'm feeling. I'm quite experienced, so I know when I should be resting, or if I'm feeling run down. My nutrition as well. So obviously, sleep's a big bit for me because I do a lot of volume. So I try and get at least a minimum 8 hours sleep a night. So that's when your body recovers. So I can tell when I've been limited to sleep, even down to 7 hours sleep a night. It does have a major impact on my training. So yeah, I aim for at least 8 hours sleep a night, and then sometimes I'll go for a siesta in the afternoon. I went to Kenya and studied what the Kenyans do in E10. They're one. They're either training or they're lying flat, sleeping and chilling out. There's no wasting energy. So ideally, if I could get away with that, that'd be great. But I've also got to make a living.
Have you played around with heart rate variability or anything like that?
No, I'm not that scientific.
No.
I'm aware of it, but for me, as I say, heart rate is a great gauge, but don't rely on it, because your heart rate monitor could be slightly a few beats off. It could actually break on the day you're running, and your heart rate can vary on lack of sleep, stress, caffeine, a variety of things.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really interesting kind of area for development at the moment, like the kind of the fitting of the feel or the kind of the more subjective things, and the tech as well. There's really interesting kind of areas of development. You spoke about biomechanics and skill. How do you go about kind of assessing skill, and what are the things that are kind of overlooked when it comes to skill training and running?
Skill training. So basically, biomechanics. It's getting better, but normally you'd probably say about 70% of the population would actually heel strike when they're running. And, we can go into this big theory of barefoot running is better, but again, studies show more barefoot runners get injured and all that. I'm not going to go into that. Basically, I look at biomechanics, so how efficient are you for your individual. So obviously, some people might not be able to run with a mid-foot strike because of their strength and conditioning history, and they haven't got the structure to support it. So that's where you have to kind of work on strength and conditioning. Biomechanics, if you're heel striking, you're actually entering a braking phase before you roll forward and push off, and you're landing outside your centre of gravity. Also, you've got a slower cadence normally, so you're missing the elastic recoil. So whereas if you have a more of a midfoot stance and a quicker cadence of roughly about 180, you're actually recruiting elastic recoil in the plantar fascia tendon and Achilles tendon. So it's basically like a big elastic band. If you load it properly, you get returned energy. So if you think standing at your computer desk, stand up and you just bounce on your toes, you'll bounce quite easily. But if you stop and say, okay, bounce every 1 second, every time you bounce, you've got to fire your glutes to jump. Whereas when you're bouncing, you're actually getting that returned energy from the plantar fasciitis and Achilles. So trying to get that into running, and also looking at the posture as well. So obviously using gravity to pull you forward. So running's sometimes described as a controlled fall, and that will pull you forward. So they're kind of the basic things on principles of running more efficiently. You don't have to be barefoot to do it. However, learning a new skill, it's good to get feedback. So I often describe to my athletes, and new athletes especially, you wouldn't play golf wearing ski mitts because you just can't get any feedback. But again, you're not going to play golf with no gloves on at all, because you'll get friction burn. So it's getting that right balance. And the same with running, you know, these huge, massive hokas you see in big cushion shoes, you know, you're not getting any feedback when you're hitting the road. So how can you know or trail what your foot's actually doing inside the shoe? Exactly. But again, if you're barefoot, it's not going to be that efficient either, because you're getting too much stress for going for the shoe. So it's that trade-off, finding the right balance. And everyone's individual in that thing where, you know, some people have said you like a 0 drop, 3 mil drop, and this you're talking about heel-to-toe differential. So it's finding what works for the individual. Coming back to everyone being an individual, but finding what works for an individual. But from a coaching point of view, if I was to take someone and coach them to run naturally, I'd actually get them to run barefoot for a wee bit of the time on a treadmill, so they can actually get the feeling of what they're doing, and then put them back in shoes so they can actually get that way, running with actually a bit of protection under the foot and find that right balance.
Are there any shoes that you'd recommend?
No. I run in Salomons and they make great trail shoes, but again, I've seen people run in shoes that work for me that don't work for that individual, because obviously their pronation levels are different. So, yeah, I could say, Salomon Sense are a great shoe. The shoe I wore for the Ramsey Round, which is the XL Alpine, was an absolutely stunning shoe. If it works for the individual, then great, but I'd get them to check the pronation levels before going into that shoe, because you get excessive pronation. And again, you know, that's one of the things I look at as a coach is when you get new runners is actually what's happening when they're running in their shoe. Have got excessive pronation, so is their ankle going past neutral? Are they rolling in the way? So yeah, I wouldn't recommend any specific shoes, or as I've seen someone run before. So yeah, I can't. Sorry.
That's all right. You mentioned like low mileage versus high mileage and kind of getting that intensity piece and the volume piece. How do you go about assessing what's right for each individual athlete?
Trial and error, to be honest. Yeah, you know, you have to get to know the athlete. You have to know look at their previous history. If they've got history, you know, look at their injury history. You know, if they keep getting injured because they're running, you know, they're trying to up the mileage too much, or they're trying to bang out 100 miles weeks and they keep getting injured, then that indicates that their body can't tolerate a mileage week. But again, you know, if someone says, okay, you know, they keep feeling undertrained and they just do short stuff, but, you know, they haven't got the distance in the legs to run, you know, so say they're doing a 50-mile ultra, but they're doing it in the back of marathon training, which some people can get away with. But the individual keeps saying, you know, I get to 30 or 40 miles and I completely bonk, I have nothing. And you look at nutrition, but you'd also look at the endurance, you know, so have they built up enough speed endurance? That might mean you might actually increase their training load. So again, it's looking at history, analysing what they've done previously. And again, if you haven't got that information, you have to kind of go with a standard training schedule for a certain extent, you know, applying the principles. Okay, we'll start with this and see how the individual adapts. That's where you kind of learn from.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Do you do much mobility training or flexibility or any kind of soft tissue work or anything like that?
Personally, or with my athletes?
Well, both.
Personally, I should do a lot more. That's one of the things I'm not great at discipline-wise. I do have a foam roller. I do know the stretching I should do, but my theory instead of that is because I'm lazy. I get a sports massage every other week, which helps maintain a decent level of flexibility. I'm not the most flexible, but again, also, instead of being reactive to injury, I'm proactive. So as I say, I get massaged every couple of weeks, and that indicates, you know, if there's a tight spot I'm feeling, then I know them, get them to work in that area. And it's getting to know your body. With the athletes I coach, I try and get them to do a fair bit of stretching after running, and again, but use the foam roller, regular sports massage, all that kind of stuff, and being aware, you know, if there's a certain area that's tight, then, you know, should you be training on it? Can you train through that? Or, you know, should you just take an extra rest day, get on the foam roller, you know? And again, you can overdo these things. You know, I see people spending hours on foam rollers and stretching, and they're actually doing more damage than good because they're not letting the injury heal or the niggle heal. You know, they're just kind of, oh, this area is tight, I'll keep rolling it, keep rolling it, keep rolling it, keep rolling it. And it doesn't get better because they're not letting the natural healing process happen. They just keep pounding it. So there's finding the right balance as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a huge amount of people who kind of know they should be doing something, but don't really know the exact specifics of what they should be doing when it comes to mobility, especially. And like, as you said, like causing soft tissue damage from just rolling one bit over and over and over again, as opposed to working above and below, especially runners and cyclists as well. It's kind of those two. When it comes to nutrition, what are you prescribing to, and what are you kind of your thoughts on nutrition for ultra?
I'm a firm believer on the Kenyan diet. As I've been to Kenya, carbohydrates is your preferred energy source. So all this high protein and fat burning, yeah, I can see why they're trying it, but your body's still going to perform better on carbohydrates. I look at it as like fueling your training. So obviously on your rest days, not eating as much food or as much carbohydrates, you're not using that fuel. But on your training days, then yeah, eating carbohydrates, a bit more complex. So, it's basically general knowledge, more fruit and veg, complex carbohydrates, try and avoid your processed stuff as much as possible. So brown bread, brown pasta, brown rice, great, avoid your white refined stuff. Fruit and veg, kind of a balanced diet. From that point of view, it's kind of what I get across to my athletes. I've had athletes that have tried to go high protein and fat and low carb, and I've seen the performances drop off. I know some people have successfully gone that way, and again, your body's a great adapter. It will adapt to whatever you put into it. So if you look at the Eskimos, their diet is fat and protein. And they've got a healthy lifestyle. They've got quite a long standard of living. So this idea that fat is bad for you, it's not. But you got to remember, fat is 3 times more energy dense than carbohydrates and protein. So you only have to eat a little bit of fat to get that same calorific value. So from that point of view, yeah, it's just Kenyan diet to a certain extent.
Yeah,
local produced food with a lot of fruit and veg and lean protein. And again, protein doesn't have to come from meat or fish. It could come from pulses and lentils and stuff like that. So, yeah, personally, I would say my diet is probably about 80 to 90% vegetarian, a wee bit of lean protein, which is normally fish, shellfish, or chicken. I very rarely eat red meat, but I do like the occasional Sunday roast.
Of course. So, I found the high fat stuff works very well for myself in particular. And it does take a lot of time to get used to, especially if you're inconsistent with it. As soon as you get so currently I'm in ketosis, and that works awesomely for me. I think it's what works for the client though, or the athlete. Yeah. That's the thing that kind of that does it. So you talked about also running with poles as well.
Yeah.
When does that, or actually, why did you choose to run with poles earlier, and why wouldn't someone most of the time?
Cool. Well, normally most people in Europe use poles, but most people trail running in Europe come from a skiing background where they're used to having poles in hand, be it cross-country ski or ski touring. UK is it's a new thing. More and more people are starting to see the benefits of using poles. In the UK, the reason I don't normally use poles. I've never raced with poles. Actually, last weekend was the first time I've used poles, and I've practiced with them probably once before. Reason being is because I've wrecked the route, and a lot of the climbs were just up through grass and heather and bog, which it wasn't really runnable. And I knew the use of poles while walking uphill is actually more beneficial. So that's why I took them. Was because of the terrain, normally the terrain I race over in the Alps, is a bit more runnable, and if it's not, it's hard packed, so you can get away with kind of putting your hands on your knees and hiking up. But for the Ramsey round, from the conditions I'd reckoned being winter and the idea of being a long day, I took the poles, and yeah, they did help massively on the legs, to save the legs, especially for the downhills. So I was managed to run quicker on the downhills when conditions would allow me. And the uphills, it worked, spread the load from the legs to the upper body as well. So That's why I personally use poles.
Nice. So I mentioned my ultramarathon on the way. Is there anything that you'd recommend in particular for someone who's kind of who's never done an ultra before, like general good fitness, but someone who's kind of looking to get that first ultra under their belt?
Be specific to what the conditions are. So obviously, if you're running the Eiger Ultra, as you mentioned, it's quite a hilly ultra. So I'm trying to get out of London as much as possible and get into the hills, because there's a completely different from running on the flat to running up and down hills, and getting completely different from running on tarmac to running on trail. And actually, I recommend to most of my athletes, myself, to run it predominantly. Most of your training either on trail or grass and by the tarmac. It just reduces the risk of injury, and it comes from reading Robert Salzar's book. He gets all his athletes in Oregon to avoid tarmac at all costs, even to the point of running on treadmill rather than running on tarmac.
That's interesting.
So from that, coming from a top coach like that, that's kind of what I've kind of prescribed as well. But again, living in a city, it's not always necessary, so I try and just say limit it, be aware of what you're doing, try and plan your route so you get to run to a park and then run around the side of a grassy park for a bit and then run somewhere else. So yeah, being specific in your training to that, getting your running fitness up is completely different from, per se, gym fitness. And trialing out nutrition-wise, trialing out kit, just basically taking out all the unknown factors so when you come to the day you're going to be confident. So, if you've trained on hilly trails, that's great. If you've worn the kit before and you've tried your nutrition, that's taking out 3 unknowns already, so it's going to give you more confidence on race day. And it's just kind of looking at it that way. Yeah,
definitely. Well, I've got one big hill right next to me because I'm on 10th floor flat. So those stairs are going to be beasted.
Stair reps, they're brutal.
Yeah. So do you work on mindset at all in terms of kind of what you think of when you're running, or any kind of visualization or anything like that?
Yeah, kind of. I've always been strong mentally. Obviously, passing marine training means you're going to be mentally strong. I don't know if I had that before. Probably say I had it before, but probably got honed a bit more when I went in the Marines, that mental toughness. But yeah, I do talk about that with my athletes a fair bit, is mental toughness. Probably the best book to read is called The Chimp Paradox by Dr. Steve Peters, British cycling team psychologist for Chris Hoy, Victoria Pendleton. And it's a great mind management book that can not just be applied to sports, but it can be applied to life. It just helps you realise why you make certain decisions. Why, if you're skipping a session in the morning because it's cold or wet outside, then these kind of reasons. And then again, goal setting, positive self-talk. So, for example, the Ramsey round, instead of thinking about it as a 90k 24 rows, I actually broke it down into 3 sections, where each section, at the end of each section, I was actually meeting my sport team. So it was easy to break it down into 3 more manageable sections. So that kind of helps break the distance out. So you're not thinking that I've got to run for 23 hours. I'm only thinking I'm running for 8 hours, and then I get to see my sport team where I'll get some tomato soup, some warm clothes, and speak to someone. So it's kind of motivation to get to that point, rather than thinking, okay, I've got that, then that, then that. And when things start getting tough, kind of positive self-talk, trying to not say I'm not hurting, because it's just a lie. You acknowledge the pain, but you also say, okay, well, I've been here before. I've got the experience to adapt to it. So my legs were tired. I was being sick, but I've been there before in a race. It's like, well, I've done it before. I know what it takes. Keep going. You're doing all right. You'll get through it. That kind of thing. Just kind of reminding yourself like that is kind of helps as well. It's kind of what I talk to about with my athletes as well. It's kind of that goal setting, that strong mindset. Okay, if something does go wrong, don't get thrown back. Think about the positives. What can you do to get yourself out of that situation, rather than dwelling on that and then kind of going in a downward spiral.
Are you 100% focused on the task in hand, or you kind of think about other things, distracting yourself?
It varies. So sometimes, distraction helps, putting music on and thinking about something else helps, but sometimes you need to focus on what you're doing. So, for example, the Ramsey round, I started at 9:10 on the Friday night, ran up into the Memoirs, which is basically a long ridgeline of 11 rows, 1,000 metres up, pitch black, snowing, icy conditions, and had music on. I was enjoying myself. It was like an adventure, I was thinking about the time at some points, but other times, I was just thinking about generally, like Christmas, all that kind of stuff, just random stuff. So it varies. If you're running for 23 hours, you're not going to remain focused for that 23 hours purely on task at hand. You are going to let your mind drift, and it's quite nice to be able to sort stuff out in your own head, plan your Christmas shopping, plan your diet for the next week. I've had great ideas when I've been out training. Like, I think it was last year, I was actually out running, doing a training run. My wife had a broken leg at the time and she was nagging me about painting the flat. So I was like, okay, fine, let's do it. I'll go and paint the flat. So I came back, went and bought some paint and painted the flat. And that decision happened about, I was out running, and by 2-3 days later, the flat was painted.
Yeah, like people call it moving meditation, and it's so easy to see why. You almost switch off, and it's like a few hours have gone by and I haven't really thought about anything. It's a really weird situation to be in. Is there any other mobility mindset tools that you use?
Not that I can think of the top of my head. They're the main ones that I would use. I also have a strong Christian faith, which kind of does help as well. It gives you perspective on life, and takes the pressure off running when you're being competitive. Sometimes, well, if I do fail at the task in hand, then it's not the end of the world. So it gives you that perspective as well.
Has that always been with you?
Well, I was brought up in a Christian family. It's not always been with me. I didn't really do anything with it. Obviously went to Marines, went to uni, enjoyed myself, didn't think about it. Kind of believed there was a God, but never actually thought it was for me. It's like something I'll do when I'm older, I want to have fun, I want to party. And it just caught back up with me about 5 years ago. And it's kind of just growing stronger and stronger. So, yeah.
How does that affect your racing and what goes on in your mind?
I think it brings me more peace. I'm kind of content with myself. I don't think running defines me. I think my faith defines me from that point of view. So I feel like I've got less pressure than maybe my other competitors have to do well. Yes, I'm competitive. I really want to do well, and I will get upset if I don't do as well as I thought I should have done. But it kind of takes me back and take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture and thought, well, yeah, there's more to life than just running it. It means I can enjoy it. I feel like I enjoy it more because it's more just a hobby, and I know, there's a lot more to life than just running and fitness. So, yeah.
Are there any books that you think have particularly defined you or have influenced you as a runner?
Yeah, probably I've got to say Born to Run's influenced me purely because before that I was heel striking. I was just getting into running. At the same time I was just getting into running, I was heel striking. And this is before I was even a coach. This when I studied sports coaching and development at uni. And just after uni, I kind of read Born to Run while I was starting running. But after I did my first ultra, and I was like, how can this be right? I tried running with a midfoot stance wearing cushion shoes, and I also was running on my toes, and I just couldn't figure it out. It was baffling me because I did have that sporting background. I should be able to figure it out. And one day I decided it was probably November. I was running around a park in Edinburgh, near from where I was staying at the time. I thought, screw it, I'm taking my shoes off, going completely barefoot. Went barefoot, probably ran a mile. Felt great for the mile. The next day I woke up, I could hardly walk. My calves were just absolutely smashed. So it's like the sorest DOMs I can experience. I was like, there's actually something there, because that mile I ran, I felt something click with that cadence and what was read in the book. So I kind of studied it a bit more and kind of did my own research. This way back in 2009, and basically how I taught myself to run naturally was actually stripping back, going back to barefoot, literally barefoot. So you didn't have any of these minimalist shoes in the market at the time, because it was pre that big natural barefoot movement. It was just starting to happen. So I bought my first pair of Vibram Five Fingers. These shoes with your fingerless fingers. Had to get them shipped over from the US. So while I was waiting for them to ship over the US, I was basically running probably about 500 metres in tarmac on a pavement down to this grassy park that I could do mile loops of this grassy park through leaves that had fallen and stuff like that. I was surprised my feet weren't actually cold. It's kind of one of these things, because your feet are working, the blood's flowing, it keeps it warm. But again, I was starting back from scratch from running 140 miles over 5 days. I could only run a mile or 2 miles, and I'd wake up the next morning with serious DOMs, and then I'd cross train for 2 or 3 days and then run again, and just built it back up that way. And then from that, when I had technique, I started gradually introducing a bit more cushion in, because then I realised, even in Vibrams, it's slowing you down because you're getting too much feedback. It's hurting to a certain point. So yeah, I gradually introduced a wee bit more cushioning. So now I run on a 4mm heel to toe drop and a Salomon Sense with a slight bit of cushioning and a 4-foot plate for rock protection. So yeah, that's got to be a book that's probably made me where I am at the moment.
Yeah. No, I've recently done the same thing. Like obviously, like finding out about ultra running, and then you get recommended that book by about 10 people straight away. And like what I've noticed that's interesting is my physiology has changed. Suddenly my arches have come back online, and they're raising up. I've always been told I had shit arches in my feet, and I have. They're almost not fallen, but just flat. And then suddenly just like everything's coming back to how it should be, getting more range of my toes. It's a really interesting phenomenon. Did you see any kind of change like that from running barefoot?
I can't really remember. I've noticed I've still got quite a low, I've actually got a flat foot still. Okay. Everyone says, oh, your foot's really flat. How can you run with, I just do my body. That's what it is. I don't have issues with that. Even when I was running barefoot, I still kept flat feet, but I've got huge calves. Everyone says my calves are absolutely massive, and thighs are huge as well. It's a nightmare trying to buy jeans that fit, so I don't buy jeans. I just wear shorts all the time. Especially with foot, I wouldn't say I noticed an arch increase or more prominent arch, but yeah, being able to spread your toes and kind of having a more natural foot-shaped foot rather than a shoe-shaped foot, I do have, and being able to move each toe independently of each other is something that's pretty cool as well to be able to do.
Yeah, get a lacrosse ball on this feet. Those arches come back straight away. So it's amazing. Who's the first person you think of when you hear the word successful?
Oh, good question. I was about to say Chris Hoy because I was just thinking about Chris Hoy on the Chimp Paradox, but there's so many people that have been successful. Killian Jornet is probably the standout one in the sport I do. He's been super successful at that. So loads of people have been successful in sport. Look at Andrew Murray at the moment. He's massively successful. You've seen his training. He's a great example of strength and conditioning and just working hard at training. You remember when he broke on the scene at Wimbledon, he was like a boy, no muscles, And look at him now, he's an absolute machine. Yeah.
Did you see that video he had the other day of his, I think he was doing kind of like med ball throws with a bounce. So he's obviously replicating. He was on the court and just like rotational stuff. Yeah. And that is some good strength conditioning there. Really impressive. Who's like a name in ultra running that particularly stands out for you in terms of achieving something that he shouldn't or she shouldn't have achieved, and like somebody doesn't really deserve to be there but has worked so hard that they've got there?
Trying to think.
Or if there's anyone that stands out in particular, who's that?
Stand out in particular. There's loads of good people in ultra running. There's loads of people pushing the boundaries, and there's loads of people that have improved massively. For me, one of my athletes I'm very proud of is 64-year-old lady who ran the West Highland Way last year.
Sweet.
95 miles, and she came to me 2 years ago saying, I want to run the West Highland Way. I've trained for it before, but I keep getting injured. And that's one of the reasons I've talked about, keeping miles low. Her training loading is very low because of her age and her body and her previous injury history. But we worked around it and worked to what we get around the West Highland Way. And she completed it, and that's kind of a great sense of achievement. So, I think there's a lot to be said for the unsung heroes, the people that give up their time to be marshals or support crews or race directors. A lot of this in the UK, they don't get paid for it. It's all voluntary, So, them people are probably unsung heroes of ultra running that make the races so great. They give up their weekends to go and stand in the middle of nowhere, freezing sometimes in the wet and the rain, to cheer runners on and give them a bit of Coke or a bit of cake. Then, that's great as well.
Are there any mentors that have kind of particularly helped you get where you are in terms of running, or any coaches?
Mentors, running coaches. Good friend, Dr. Andrew Murray's helped me massively. from the scientific background, and running wise, probably he's a good sounding board because I don't have a coach person myself, so I kind of sound ideas off him, and he's one kind of goes, look, Donnie, this is what you're doing, you should be actually doing this. And again, stuff he's advised me on, like vitamin D supplements, getting my iron checked, vitamin C, zinc when you got the cold, just doing all the right stuff. He works with elite level Sports Scotland athletes, and it's kind of, he passes stuff on to me, making sure I get my flu vaccine, all these kind of things that add up, all the little things that will give you marginal gains to a certain extent. It's been great. And then again, all the books I've read on training have made a difference. I've studied a fair bit from British cycling, even to the point, what they did with marginal gains was they used to take their mattress and pillows to their own competitions just so they'd get a better night's sleep. And it's something I've done, so I'll quite often travel to races in a camper van. My camper van sits in B&B because I know I'll get a better night's sleep, and that begs I'm used to it. Yeah. Or if I've got space in the luggage, I will take my pillows from my own bed if I'm going away for a weekend and using my own pillows. And these kind of small things make a difference.
Do you hack or quantify your sleep in any way?
No, I just keep an eye on it, my alarm clock's set for 6:30 most mornings, and that's when my wife gets up, so that's when I normally get up. So I'm normally trying to get in bed for about 10 o'clock. On weekends I might get a bit of a longer lie depending on training. If I've not been getting to bed because I've been out or had other things on, then I'll try and get a nap in the afternoon and make up for that hour I've missed to that point of view. So I don't keep a track of it. I just know, because I'm very routine, my week's very routine. I know I do a clean run on a Saturday, have a long line on a Sunday, 6:30, 1 o'clock most days of the week, bed by 10, sometimes earlier if I can get away with it. So yeah.
And are there any quotes or mantras that you repeat yourself often or that you live by?
Not really, no. I wouldn't say there's any quotes or mantras that I would live by. I've got quite a few favourite quotes and kind of stuff like that, but there's nothing I would repeat in my head saying, yeah, that gets me through hard times,
If you had a billboard anywhere, what would it say?
Get active. It's the best thing you can do for your health.
Okay, and why is that?
Basically, the studies show, basically the reason we're in such poor health in the UK is because people are inactive. The difference it makes by just doing 30 minutes of activity a day to someone's health can give them an extra 5 years of life and that quality of life as well. It's the kind of thing I'm passionate about. It's helping people be aware of that. Family and friends, I'd see, and I try and encourage them to be more active. 'Cause I know long term. And again, you can even just look at the NHS, the strain in the NHS, the obesity puts on the NHS, people were more active. Yes, you can go on a diet, but it's easier to probably get someone more active and then influence their diet rather than go, okay, you can't eat this, can't eat that. You got to think, what scares me and frightens me, to be honest with you, is, you think of a typical office worker wakes up in the morning, sits down, has a bowl of cereal, either sits or drives to work, sits behind a desk for 9 hours, sits, drives home, sits down, have their dinner, puts the TV on and watches soaps.
Yeah.
5 days a week.
Yeah, exactly.
That's frightening to me. I can't figure out how someone can not be active. That is just, it's called a sitting disease.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what's in the same vein and even more scary is kids. They get up, do exactly the same morning routine. They get to school, they sit down, and they are told off when they stand up and want to move around. And then they have 5-10 minutes to run around, and then they get back, sat down all day, do exactly the same thing, get on the bus. And that's the scary thing, the fact that they can't get out of it and it's being kind of institutionalized to be sat down.
And then you get the computer games that they can live their fantasy through computer games. So there's no thing as going out in the streets and playing with a football or playing with a tennis ball or that. They live their dream through FIFA 95 or whatever. It's quite a scary thought.
Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty somber place to end the show. Where can people find out a bit more about you and kind of follow and if there's any sponsors that you need to mention or anything like that? Let's go.
Cool. So if anyone wants to find out more information, I've got my own website. It's www.getactiverunning.com. It's got videos of previous escapades. It's got my coaching profile as well. With sponsors, Salomon UK and amount of fuel and nutritional stuff I use when I'm training. They've been a great help, and I'm looking forward to working with them in 2017.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for an awesome show. I really appreciate that. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Alpha Movement Podcast. This episode was live streamed in my free Facebook group, Alpha Athletes Page 2.0, where you can get priority access to the guests. You can ask your questions via me to them and get them answered. You can stay up to date with the latest goings on in the Alpha Movement world, and you can access me, my ramblings, my posts, and all the fun stuff. Also, if you enjoy the show, you can head over to patreon.com/Alpha Movement Podcast, and you can pledge however much you want per month, just to keep the show on the road. It's something that sucks up a lot of time. Well, I say sucks up, it's the absolute pleasure to do, but it sucks up time in some way. It sucks up my money and resource, and I want to keep this going for as long as I can because I know how much you guys get from the show. So if you head over to patreon.com/Alpha Movement Podcast, you can pledge as little or as much as you want every single month, and you can cancel it whenever you would like, and it just helps to keep the show going. Other than that, if you head over to iTunes, you can find us, leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed the show, and you can find us on social media. This show relies on your support, so spread the word. If you enjoy it, reach out to whoever my guest was this week and myself, say you enjoyed the show, and I shall see you soon for another episode of the Alpha Movement Podcast.